This is my Philodendron Glorious. I got it in 2022 as a small import and it is now one of the biggest, most established plants in my collection. And today it's finally time to extend its moss bowl because honestly, it's well overdue. But while I do that, I wanted to take you through the whole journey of this plant because I actually have footage from pretty much every step of the way. And I think it's gonna put into perspective just how much this thing has grown in my home. Before we do though, if you are new here and you don't know me already, hi, my name is Emma and I make houseplanty content all over the internet. So if you want to follow along with my houseplanty journey and maybe learn something along the way, stick around, watch some more of my videos, and subscribe to my channel. If you are not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you returning. Now let's get into this big boy's journey. So yes, while I am extending this moss pole today, I'm not actually gonna go through steps on it. I have done so many moss pole chop and extend videos in the past, and so I can link a couple down below in the description if you want to see that. I am just gonna go through this one's journey. So I got this plant as an import in 2022. I think it was around January time, and I spent 130 pounds on it as an import, which is not a small sum of money for me. That is on the higher side of what I like to spend on plants, but I knew the Glorious was one that I really wanted. And so far it hasn't disappointed me. It was shipped bare root, and so that was a little bit iffy, not my ideal, but in the end it didn't really matter. It acclimated to my home fine, and within a couple of weeks I was able to take it out of the Acclimation bag and pop it onto a moss pole and put it into my cabinet. It stayed living in my cabinet for a little while, not too long, for about 9 months. It was pretty happy in there. Oh my goodness, I've just cut off some of the biggest leaves. Look at that, ah! After it grew out of the cabinet, I moved it onto my sideboard in this area of my living room. We don't have the sideboard anymore, but it lived there for quite a while. It's like quite far back from the windows, so it was underneath a grow light, and it did very well there. By December of that year, it was big enough for me to air layer, so I did just that. And I took those cuttings that I air layered and I put them back into the bottom of the plant, because before that it was just one single stem. And I don't know about you, but I like my plants on poles to be nice, big, full looking plants, and you can't really get that with just a single stem. And it was growing so well and looking beautiful, but I decided in September of 2023, because it had reached over the top of the pole, touching my ceiling on the sideboard, that it needed some surgery, some moss pole surgery to be specific. I wanted to take it off of the moss pole it was on and put it on an entire new moss pole, including its root system, which I think was a little bit ambitious. I think I wanted to rearrange how the plants were laid out on the pole, and the only way I could think of doing that was through this like quite intensive surgery, but it bounced back from that so well, and it meant that I was able to have an even fuller plant from then on out. And it's probably no surprise that it ended up outgrowing that spot. This is just quite a quick grower. It was just putting out new leaves constantly, and I loved that for it. So eventually I moved it into the bedroom, which was the only space I have in my home where I could fit a moss pole this big with this much plant on it. Sure, I started it out on Joe's bedside table, and it lived there for a while until it outgrew that space, and then it went on a plant stand, and eventually it had to get moved to the floor because it was just so big. And I have chopped and extended this time as well, and every time I do, the plant just gets more full, which I love. But then in 2025, I had a little bit of a mental health wobble, and that kind of caused me to stop giving as much care to a lot of my plants, especially the ones on moss poles. I was not keeping them hydrated, I wasn't keeping them topped up enough. They were just getting a bit neglected, and you can see that in the sort of size of leaves that it has started putting out. It kind of just started getting smaller and smaller. I also started just chopping it once it got to the top of the moss pole instead of putting more moss in or extending, because I just couldn't be bothered. I didn't have the mental capacity to do that sort of thing, and that just caused it to get to this point where it was sizing down quite a lot. And I'm pretty sure it has had pests in this time as well. I treated it at one point for flat mites when I did my entire collection. I'm sure I've treated it for thrips. I don't think it's ever had anything like spider mites or mealybugs, which is fantastic. But in general, it's just been super duper resilient. But now here we are in 2026, and in general, I'm feeling so much better mental health wise. I feel like I can actually take care of my plants, and I've been keeping this one's moss pole consistently moist for a little bit now, which I'm very proud of because I'd let it dry out so many times and it would just get to the point where it was hydrophobic and couldn't be watered through any sort of normal method, which is really annoying. So being back on track and making sure that this one is getting all of the moisture it needs makes such a difference. I've already noticed the roots growing into the pole a whole heck of a lot more, which is always a positive because I really rarely actually water this one from the bottom of the plant. It's almost always being watered through the pole. And so when I was just letting it dry out, that just meant that it just fully wasn't getting water. Even in the bottom, because I was not in a great place to do it and it didn't necessarily like me for that. But here we are now. Going forward, I feel like I can do so much better with this one, and I'm really hoping to get it to size up more again because I love when this one grows big beautiful leaves. It is growing some. They aren't small by any means, but they're kind of more akin to the size that they were when I got the plant, as opposed to the sort of greatness that I know it can achieve. And yes, doing a chop and extend like this does kind of feel and look like a bit of a downgrade for a while because you suddenly have half the plant you had before, but in the long run, I know it's gonna be much happier for it, and I'm hoping that doing so will help it size up and get bigger again soon. There we go, it's back in its spot, and I just love the way it looks here, especially with the Tycon next to it. It's just like the contrast of the velvet with the fenestrations and the variegation and like the bright veins. It is just perfect. So that is the story of my Philodendron Glorious. I hope it has inspired some of you to get this absolutely magnificent plant. I highly, highly recommend it. And it's also your reminder to take care of your moss poles, whether it's watering them enough or giving them a chop and extend when needed, because it will help your plants in the long run. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up down below and leave a comment on other houseplanty things you'd like me to talk about in the future, and subscribe for more. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Don't forget to keep growing. Bye!